enlightened. Like, what does that mean? I think it's the process of becoming light. A lot of these experiences, they feel heavy in the body. And we collect all these traumas and these emotions, weighs you down. Even like if you see someone going through something, even their posture changes. It feels heavy. When I think of the word technology, we think like robots, AI, but I gravitate more towards like, sound is an ancient technology. It's just, much more simple, but maybe I've seen too many sci-fi movies. I don't know. A lot of the AI talks I went to, it seemed like CEOs they did have good intentions. I was like, oh, these are like conscious, spiritual people. They actually do care about the human experience and how this is going to affect, like they have a whole team dedicated to that component. Like, how can we combat these quote unquote negative effects?
This is the Human Future Podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology and spirituality with some of the world's brightest minds. Together, we paint a vision of the desirable future and discuss the actionable steps to make that vision a reality. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm excited for our conversation. I think a good place for us to start is for you to introduce a little bit about yourself. Tell me your story. What's the main thread of your story that for people to understand who's in front of me?
Okay. Thank you for having me. My name's Michelle Berlin. Most people call me Shelly. It's just a nickname that I got from my family. My story. Take it from the top. All right. I grew up in New Jersey. Yeah. I was a wild child, kind of a tomboy, always into sports, always injuring myself. When I was in high school, I got like kind of bit by the travel bug. Like I went to Europe that first summer and I was like, oh, there's like a whole world out here of exploration of cultures. And I really feel like, even though I did go to college, I feel like the world became my classroom. So I traveled to 46 countries. And took all of these different cultural teachings and brought them in as a part of my life, my teachings. I mean, a lot of speed bumps along the way, but that's it in a nutshell. I came to Miami 18 years ago, and I partnered up and owned my first yoga studio in 2007 here, when there was like 2 studios. I mean, we were in the...
What was the second one?
Trio Yoga in Edgewater. When Edgewater and Wynwood, there was like nothing there. But the first one we were in the Russian Turkish bathhouse. I don't know if you remember that. That got closed down.
Yeah, closed down,
on 54th Street. Yeah. And then we opened Trio. So I had a studio for about like 8 to 10 years. And then I was like, oof, okay. I was done with running a business. And I still do the same thing. Run trainings, events, and all that. But without the headache of a studio.
Responsibility of I hear you. You mentioned about some road bumps along the way. What's the biggest one?
Oh, probably I was in a car accident, which really brought me into this practice. I was, how old was I? I was 20 years old. I was driving to the airport to study abroad in Australia. And this was in New Jersey. My boyfriend was driving to the airport to say his goodbyes. We were stopped at a toll booth in New Jersey. You got to pay all the tolls. And I remember turning, and before I knew it, I just felt like this car slam into the back of us. So a drunk driver had hit us. We were at a dead stop with our neck turns. He was paying the toll and slammed into us at like 60 miles an hour. Wow. He got out of the car and ran into the woods. It was a hit and run. I mean, I was shocked, but of course, thank God I had my seatbelt on. The whiplash and was like so intense. We went to the ER. They gave me, a neck brace, but I was like determined. I didn't have any like cuts or anything, but I was like, I'm getting on that plane to go, which maybe was not a great decision because then I sat in the plane to go to Australia right after all this inflammation. I was nuts. I was very naive and like, as a kid and foolish. So then I had to start PT in Australia. And I soon realized being there, I was like, wow, I really didn't take care of these spinal injuries. And I had all these herniated discs. And from that point on, I was in pain, so much pain, like all the time. I gained a bunch of weight. Part of it was because I was like drinking and partying in Australia too. You know, I was 20 years old, turned 21 when I was there, but also I just wasn't taking care of my body. And then that really brought me into yoga. I moved to Miami, got plugged into this very small yoga community here. Now it's grown massively.
Totally.
And then my teacher at the time was like, do you want to partner up in the studio? I was like, yeah, that could be good. Mm-hmm. And then I was doing vinyasa and all these different practices. I was like, there's something more to this. And I was like, and this specific style wasn't really serving my body and my healing. I was still having a lot of pain. So I decided to go to India, and I studied at the Iyengar Center, which is really big institute there. And I was lucky enough to be there when BKS Iyengar was teaching, who's a amazing guru. So Iyengar is like, I don't know if it's very popular here in Miami because people are like, they want to sweat, they want to move.
Yeah.
But it like restructures your whole body. It's kind of like physical therapy yoga. So you really can heal. It's like you take it pose by pose. I mean, the practices are very long. It's a very well-known center in India. It's like serious studying and serious, like, you know, anatomy training, and they really do heal certain ailments and issues. Cool. So that's where I really learned, I feel like, real yoga.
Yeah. And that you ended up there because you were on your self-healing discovery. How do I naturally heal myself, basically?
Yeah, and I just wanted to go to the source. I was like, I want to go to India and see what, you know, because the West, I mean, my teacher and my partner at the studio, he's amazing, very well knowledgeable. I think he's still one of the greatest teachers here in Miami, Ruslan Clayton, amazing teacher. But he inspired me to like dig a little deeper. That's why I went to India. So I was like, all right, let me like discover what they're teaching there. And actually, I realized that I picked up so many bad habits practicing myself, and they really showed me a more disciplined way to practice. And then also just the devotion and you know, you can't walk into a shala there in like your Lululemons and little, you know, like it's a real devotional practice. If you go to like certain hatha yoga ashrams or like the temples there, like you have to cover. It's not. So it was so interesting to see that. And some people don't even do any poses and they're practicing yoga. So it's really a devotional, like really spiritual practice where, you know, we take it in the West, we change it, shift it, make it ours, which is also beautiful. But I feel like we're losing the lineage a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. So what's the kind of negative externality of commercializing this whole practice, would you say?
Oh, boy. That's where we get into the funny stuff. I mean, I've seen it. Look, on one hand, I think wellness, consciousness, spirituality, it's like multi-million-dollar. You might even know statistics of what the industry, you know, makes. And this, like, I call it fast food yoga. You go into a studio, you do a power yoga class, you do 20 chaturangas, sweat, get in, get out.
Sure.
And but that's like a kind of catering to our Western mentality. No one wants to sit and hear about yogic philosophy for an hour before and then practice. And like, I get that. But so I do think these lineages are being watered down, and people know yoga is like, oh, it's just stretching, or it's just getting in shape, or getting a yoga butt, or, you know. So I think I wouldn't say it's negative. So I think though, making it accessible, because if you bring people into a yoga class and you say, we're just going to sit here and meditate for an hour, they'll be like, I'm not doing this. Or you're going to sit here and chant the yoga sutras, they'll be like, why? I don't want to do this. So it's kind of like the gateway drug, the asanas. So there's a positive aspect to it. And then if you want to go deeper, you go a little deeper and you can go on your own journey. But I do think the commercialization is, I mean, let me tell you, in India, they're like, what is the West doing to our practice? Right. I've had many teachers be like, you Americans.
Totally.
Like,
right.
Yeah, but, you know.
So it's basically as the Western maybe Western approach to doing things, it's more materialistic, and they're mainly focusing on material experience, or because they don't really have good framework or understanding of maybe spiritual. You think that's part of the reason why they're completely disregarding the whole spiritual part of this practice and doing it at a faster pace, because now you can only need to focus on the body? Is that kind of
thing? Yeah, I think, and it's great. People want to exercise. They want to, and I think the benefits of kind of tiptoeing into the spiritual process is first through the body. If your body doesn't feel good, you can't sit and observe your mind. So, yeah, but you can't fault the West, because if you look at the history of the yoga asana and why there was much fewer poses, like these Brahmas and Nagababas in India, they would, leave their village, renounce the material world, and go on a pilgrimage through the Himalayas to find themselves or find this connection to source. Yes. And so they were walking. And then so they just needed okay, we need a few seated poses. We've just walked for 8 hours.
Right.
And now we're going to sit and do this, maybe 4 asanas. Whereas in the West, we're sitting all day. So we need to move our bodies more. So I think, of course, we need to cater to our culture, but I think it is important to remember the potency of the teachings in the certain texts, which is it's really cool. And it's not about being fluffy and woo woo and it's actually a very deep, brilliant science when you unpack it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the teachers in India, they're tough. They're not nice. They're not, they're just, they're tough and they're mean and they're they keep you on point. They're not, the languaging even here, I notice in students are different. The teachers here, open your heart and shine bright. There's none of that there.
Okay. Yeah. Softness. Yeah. Soft and comfortable and convenient. I feel like that's qualities of also Western way of doing things. We're running away from hard things or inconveniences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the discipline. I think we've made spirituality our own. Everybody's personal practice is different, but we're often generalizing oh, this is what it is to be spiritual. You have to be this, and this.
Yeah.
And that doesn't resonate with me. I've even had some, lash outs oh, you're a yogi, you're supposed to be like this. Well, really? How do you know what a yogi is supposed to be? I'm a human first.
Right.
So you kind of get you're not supposed to speak out about your opinions or feelings or show anger or curse or eat meat or there's this, we get put in a box.
Sure.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about, this whole wellness space, the space that you're in, what people misunderstand? The point of it, maybe?
What? People that are practicing or?
Mm-hmm.
First there's so many practices and avenues you can take, but I think the biggest maybe misconception or idea that people have in their heads is just what I said, you have to be a certain way. There's an archetype. And I think they forget, we're human. We're just going through this human process first. And then, we're in this meat suit, I guess you could call it. Trying to connect and of course trying to be a better person and all of those things. But I think at the very core, we're human and we're not going to be these perfect Buddhas. We live in a modern society. One of my teachers always said the monks in the Himalayas, they have it easy. They don't have TVs there. They don't have distractions of women. They don't have they're up there in the Himalayas, no one to bother them. So we have the harder spiritual practice. We have so much coming at us all the time.
Right.
So,
basically you would promote us not shy away from our flaws of human kind of flaws and not put a band-aid of, oh, I'm into yoga now. And so I have to be in a certain way. So I don't, almost disregarding all of your flaws in a way.
Yeah, we're human. we're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. Or, I think just got to do our best, go through the human experience. I'm very big on like acknowledging your feelings, your anger, your frustration. Like I don't believe in repressing them for the sake of being spiritual. I mean, this might not sit well with a lot of people because that documentary came out and really made him look a little crazy, and he was, but I love Osho. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've read his books before that Netflix documentary came out, and I considered him one of my teachers. Mm-hmm. I mean, but he was a disruptor. He didn't follow the rules. He loved the material and the spiritual, and he found a way to like blend the two together. I mean, yeah, he had a bunch of Rolls Royces that didn't sit well with a lot of people, and they're like, oh, well, that's not, that's not a guru. But I resonated with like a lot of what he said. I mean, he was very anti-religious, meaning like the organization of it. He was very anti-establishment, so that's why he was a threat to a lot of societies there. Not that I say you should aspire to have like 10 Rolls Royces or however many he had. Yeah. But I really, a lot of what his teachings were, they really landed with me.
Sure. So. What would you say your way of enjoying the physical part of the experience? How do you do it? Like, what's your style?
Physical and
like, yes, he liked the whole material part of the experience, Rolls Royces, women, whatever. What's your way of enjoying that part of the human experience?
I mean, I still like to go out and dance and be with friends, and the vegans aren't going to like this, but I love a steak once in a while. Yeah. But like, I do try to balance as much as possible, like enjoy. Like I remember once, I love dancing and I love music. I mean, I grew up on house music. I grew up at the Jersey Shore, and I love to dance. And I remember one time I would wake up in the morning sometimes and go to space and just go dance. It's like my workout. And a student saw me. He's like, was like in shock. Like, what are you doing here? You're our yoga teacher. I'm like, I'm having fun. That's what I'm doing. But really the look of shock on his face. Like, what are you doing in this place? So I can plug into most environments and have fun. And of course, like without judgment, so.
How many students do you think you've taught throughout your life so far? Like how many individual people have you touched with your practice?
I don't know. It's a good question. Like in the classes, I mean, when I had the studio, I was reaching more people because I was teaching there. I mean, I was there every day for 8 years.
Hundreds of thousands or thousands?
I don't know. I mean, I had this. I had the class size was like 25 to 30. So for that many years, I don't know. I've never thought about that. I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, that just kind of came. This question just kind of came. Huh. Probably, I would imagine tens of thousands.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, because we had a lot of people walk through the door over there at our studio. It was fun. Yeah.
How often do people recognize you out in the public just when you're just doing your own things, grocery store, out of places?
Yeah, I feel like Whole Foods is like a community watering hole. But yeah, if I'm on the beach, I mean, I just think because I've lived here for 18 years now. Right. I just see a lot of faces, familiar faces. Mm-hmm. But on this side of the bridge, I don't recognize so many people. Mm-hmm. I lived on the beach for so long that it's like that's my community. And the beach is like a small village, I feel like South Beach. It's like...
Right, for sure. Yeah. So sound healing is a big part of also what you do. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about that whole part of practice. What is sound healing? Mm-hmm. What are the benefits? Like, give me a little crash course on sound healing. Yeah.
So I got into it because when my first or second trip to India, I went twice. I remember, I forget which ashram it was. It was maybe at like Shivananda. Someone was playing like the Tibetan bowls, and I was like, oh wow. I was like, that really put me like in a zone very quickly. Mm. So I started to like collect a few instruments, and at our old studio, we had like the crystal bowls. And then I was like, oh, there's something to this. Like it helps you get to a meditative state really fast, like faster than, trying to meditate on your own. So I found that it made rest, relaxation, and meditation very accessible, which I loved. So I started studying, and I took Jonathan Goldman's course, and then I wanted to learn a little bit more. So I went to Nepal and I studied with these monks. It was just mind blowing. And
can you tell me a little bit more? Well, what was that like?
Well, so I hiked in Annapurna region, and there was this village with this like sound shaman. And I say shaman, like he would just work with the herbs in the area and sound in his clinic. They don't have a lot of access to the things we have here in the West. Like to get into some of these villages high up in the Annapurna region, you can only walk or take a donkey. And some of the path, like you can't even take the donkey. So, it's not like they could take their car and go to the Walgreens down the street. So they're working with all the herbs and everything in the Himalayas. So every morning I would go to the Buddhist temple, and they would do that throat chanting and play the gongs. And I was like, wow, this sound, like it was so potent. It would bring me to tears. And then during the day I would sit in his clinic and observe. So he took me on as like kind of an apprentice. He didn't speak English. So his son helped a little bit translating. And so I just observed the way he used sound and like he would make these teas and to help heal people with certain stomach ailments and, any like little viruses. And they believe, I know in like our medical culture, we're not allowed to say this, but I mean, they truly believe, and I do believe it, that sound can really facilitate a space in the body where healing can take place. It works with the cymatics in the body, working with the water. And when you put bowls on the body or work with those gongs, those metal instruments create like this photon field of energy, and it starts to vibrate all the cells, the tissues, organs. I mean, everything has like a resonant frequency in our body, every organ, every tissue, every bone. And if something's out of alignment, I mean, we can use sounds to bring things back to a state of relaxation, homeostasis. And then the vibration also works with the vagus nerve. So that's why I think like humming, there's a pranayama technique, Brahmari pranayama, just they say to do that to stimulate the vagus nerve, which puts you into parasympathetic, or the Om, chanting Om. So it's not that like, we haven't gotten as far as like sound will heal your cold in that moment, but it can facilitate and create a very fertile environment in the mind where healing can take place. If you're stressed all the time, like you're going to stay, sick. I mean, if you think about like when people have kidney stones, what do they use to zap them? They use vibration. They use those radio frequency things to zap and disintegrate the kidney stones. So there's a lot of science that's finally catching up to sound healing. I mean, the benefits, relaxation, helps with sleep. It's been scientifically proven that it helps the immune system. It helps with pain in the body. And then the more specific, like there's a lot of research being done with rogue cells and vibration. There was an interesting TED talk on it. I forget the name of it, but they're looking at what vibration and dissonant frequencies and resonance frequencies does to cancer cells. We can't say that it heals cancer, obviously, but it's just interesting to see how the cells change with vibration. So they are looking into all of that. So it's interesting. And I love sound because where yoga isn't, in some people's minds, it might not be so approachable. Like if I try to get my mom to come to yoga class, I can't do that. Those headstands and this and that. But if you could go to anybody, your grandma, like, a teenager, just lay down for an hour. That's it. That's all you have to do is lay down and receive. So that's why I got more into sound, because it's so accessible for everybody. Even though, of course, yoga is too. You can always keep it simple, like the posturing and breath work. But there's like no excuse. No one can say with sound to lay down or receive, I can't do that. You
no
can't
resistance, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
There's really, anybody can enjoy and relax. Yeah.
Can you have too much sound healing?
No, I don't think so. I haven't, so in the clinic in Nepal, he said, there's nothing a 3-day gong bath can't fix. If someone had, and this was their model there, like if someone was going through something like they had like a little tumor, or they would lay them down on the table and like people would rotate and play the gong on people for like days. This is in serious cases. I didn't see it because there was like nobody there, but that's what his son told me. I was like, wow. But too much sound healing, I don't know.
Because in my understanding, if you're saying you're starting to produce frequencies of like recalibration back to the natural state of life, and that means if you are constantly not in the vibration state of sound, that means you're always calibrated just right to be, I don't know. That's kind of how I understand it. That's what that question came from. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's been, I always try to like cross-reference with, because there are a lot of articles that are coming out studying like the sound. So I don't know if they've done like a time reference type thing.
Maybe there's another component where you're training your body to always rely on the calibration external force that's constantly helping you to stay centered. Right. And then without it, you don't know how to maybe to like reset on your own. But then like, I feel like there's so many things that throw us off. So to go back in, I mean, it definitely wouldn't, I think it would only be beneficial to do it every day. Like if you could, like it's amazing because we're just so stimulated all day. Like, oh my God, the phones and just, I mean, living in an urban environment and the media, social media, I mean, forget it. I feel like we need more than somebody would like living in the, like I said, the Himalayas in Nepal. Yeah. Social media, maybe we can touch on that topic. I mean, you participate in that space, in that world. And you also, I'm sure, recognize that social media have things that are kind of not serving us. They're pulling our attention away and maybe pulling the society apart. How do you consolidate the two? Yeah.
I think I definitely use it as a tool for my business so I could reach more people and do what I love. And I think, unfortunately, it is an important tool for someone like me who's an independent contractor. I have friends that like work a 9-to-5 and they're lawyers. They don't need to be promoting their services on social media. But I think for people in this industry, it is a tool, but it also, you could get caught up in that doomsday scrolling. And I mean, and then also, I think when used to promote like services, I think it's good. At least for me, I found it very beneficial. But, of course, there's like the younger generation, they're putting pictures of everything they do at every moment and the validation seeking. And, I feel bad for like the younger generation. Like I was talking about it with my friend. Like I grew up, we didn't have phones. I think first I got a BlackBerry in college. So I grew up like just playing outside and you see these kids like walking down the street and they're like, I'm like, oh man, it's such a different world.
I don't seeing the trend, and I'm very kind of deep into technology world. I'm a tech junkie and I like looking at it from the perspective of evolution and where it's all headed, and technology being on the forefront of evolution as we know it. And I like to look at the different patterns, and I see the trend of us spending more time in a digital space and also putting out more content. So this trend of us sharing more about ourselves is not slowing down. It's only accelerating. I think humans in the future will be putting out a lot more, maybe every minute of their life into the digital space. I don't know personally how I also feel about that. But I also at the same time interested to see what that would result in, because I'll give you one example that I've been kind of playing around with is recording. Ideally, it's all secure and it's all in your own private local like space, but recording every conversation, every verbal interaction, either with yourself or with other people. So oftentimes I go on the walk, I would verbally record my thoughts and I store them and things like that. And so I wonder what would that be like when we can refer to every second of our life, not even with our own mind, but with the artificial mind that can scan through your entire life and give you the most insightful, piece of information in that specific moment. So maybe you might forget about something that you've heard or have seen, but you have this agent, and again, it's a whole can of worms. What could that, like, being too reliant on the agent is also like, but I'm mainly looking now at the positive side of it. And that doesn't mean that we have to go that route, but the positive side is, now you have unlimited memory and unlimited insight, on any, current moment of your situation. You can draw back from every experience and every conversation, every piece of information that you've ever had, came across, and maybe haven't come across, maybe global information. And then when you are making a decision or you're experiencing life, it could give you just the right piece of information for you to have some kind of aha moment or some kind of like
break a pattern or
Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. It's also scary to me. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing with technology. There's a lot of benefits, and then there's the component of like AI growing, and people are like, they're going to take over the world.
Yeah. What's the scariest thing for you about technology, evolution of technology, and like it may be taking over control? But what else do you see that could go wrong and that you're kind of concerned about?
I think we're already seeing it. Like the kids, it's so different. I mean, in young girls, like young girls in middle school and in high school, I have a lot of friends with daughters, and wow, it's like really sad. The need for the validation. And, when I was young, it's like, if you did something, you goofed off in the classroom, maybe a few kids around you would know about it. Now, if you do something in the classroom, the entire school will know about it because they'll text. It's like, and imagine that, like, that kind of humiliation, or, I mean, these kids are online. So I worry about the younger generation. That's going to be our, our leaders now. And also the scariest thing, I think it's happening now, like the mind control, how easily we are manipulated through social media, not only social media, but also the media. So I really appreciate, again, maybe it won't sit well with all the audience, but like I think the disruptors, like the Joe Rogans and the Aubrey Marcus, who are doing these podcasts that are, talking about things that, the mainstream media or maybe an older generation will say, oh, that's, conspiracy. But I think that, it is important to get truth out there. But I think with the younger generation, there's like a mind control thing.
When you mention about being basically a lot more exposed to your imperfections or your wrongdoings or something like that, sometimes I see the world, the future, like an ideal case scenario where there's full transparency. I don't know how realistic that is, but imagine that every decision, every action, everything is stored on the, like a transparent, let's say, blockchain of some sort that everyone have access to. There's no way to participate in the public domain without being stored for everyone to see, basically. I think there are benefits for that is to, when we have traumas and kind of things that are not optimal in ourselves, the best way to solve them is to have a mirror of some sort, another person or yourself, like reflection. And this could also serve as that tool for, kids are a lot more, exposed and, under pressure to not make any mistakes, because if they do, then the rest of like their tribe is gonna but at the same time, maybe that's a there is benefit to that.
Yeah, I agree. Like accountability and I think there definitely is like you can learn. We learn from our past. Like the only way we can move forward and change the future or change the present is to learn from the past. So if you could do that on a personal level through, technology, AI. I mean, I'm grateful for, I have moments where I'm like, oh, I hate Instagram. But like, I mean, honestly, sometimes if I don't post, like where I'm teaching, people are like, oh, I didn't know you were teaching because you didn't post it. I'm like, oh, wow, people are really plugged into being in the know through this platform. Yeah. So it's like keeping up with the Kardashians. You gotta
totally.
I think if you use it with that intention, but yeah, the people definitely are being more vulnerable on social media. I think it's nice, and I think like sharing, because then you could help people like, oh, I didn't know that you went through that. I'm going through the same thing. So it's like you can reach people that might not be as open or brave to speak out about something. But so I think there's always positive and negative aspects.
Yeah, I think conscious use of technology. I mean, that's something I promote a lot. Is what kind of energy we're putting in. What's your intention of putting a particular piece of content or communicating an idea or developing a new technology? There should be an intention of conscious positive change in the world. I think that everything that we create should really have as much conscious intention in it. That shouldn't just be making more money, but it should be how can we maximize the positive impact in the world.
Right.
And I believe new leaders who are making those decisions, younger generation, they understand that concept a lot more than the older generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's hope there.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. There is. Yeah, like I said, they know this the best. They've grown up with it. So let's see what they do with it, what comes up.
Our generation, I mean, similar to yours, like we had exposure to life basically internet, cell phones, technology, and now we're using them on like an hourly, not even a daily basis, on like a minute basis. We're just so plugged into that. It's part of who we are now. And then the new generation have no idea what it's like. Yes, conceptually they can like, oh yeah, pre-writing or pre-internet. That must be interesting, but they don't really understand what that it's like. And I think people of our age or those who've experienced both worlds, it's our responsibility to bring all of the benefits of the lifestyle pre-internet and bring it into the internet.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a whole complicated world out there with this technology, but yeah, I think if you, like you said, I like the intent of using it consciously. A lot of good comes out of it as well.
What would you say are some great benefits of living without like technology with tools, something that we can borrow and something we should bring in more into the digital domain, something that you've had before when you were a child that the kids nowadays maybe might not have or might not realize? What would that be?
I mean, I try to make a conscious effort. Like even if I need like a little break, I'll go on a walk, but I'll leave my phone in the house. But some people just, they can't do it.
Yeah.
It's like an extra appendage for them. They hold on to the phone and they're walking, and I see it in my park by my house, and they're just and they're not even like looking at the trees. And when's the last time like you've been online at the grocery store and you see people just standing there observing other people? No, everybody to pass the time is on their phone. So I think it's a good practice to, even if it, like something like, I can't be on my phone. What if there's an emergency? I was like, well, we did it years ago. Yes. Leaving your phone at your house or in your car or whatever, and just like go outside in nature and just let nature envelope you. Because then there's also the whole thing with like the EMFs, like always having your Bluetooth on and the phone on. I mean, I did notice like whenever I do like a nature hike in the mountains, and I never, there's no cell service up there. The phone's off. I do notice that like I'm sleeping so much better, body pain, like everything. I mean, it's So I think it's a good practice. And I know parents do their best now to put the phone away, no screen. Now it's like a thing, no screen time. But it is important. But then, you know, and I get it. You take a kid to a restaurant. What's the first thing you do? Oh, shh, be good. Give them. I feel bad for my parents. We were like little animals. They just had to deal with it at the restaurant. They didn't have any like screens to give us to, you know, so yeah. But yeah, I think it's a good practice to leave the phone.
Yeah.
Even if it's 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. You know, I see that the most advanced technology is the one that's least noticeable. And I hope that the future will look a little different from what we have now, where we have physical devices that we have to stare into, where technology is kind of on the background. It is always there. It's kind of like air. If we need to inquire some information, we can, without even like pulling in any of our phones, we can just get that information. But it's also optimized for us to be present.
I went to a talk at Summit, you know, because I tried to go to talks that like I was like, all right, let me go to some AI talks because I would always gravitate toward the wellness and, you know, functional medicine talks about. I was like, let me go to some AI talks. You might know the guy because you're more plugged into this world, but there is a device that you wear a pin and instead of always being on your phone, it like projects out in front of you where only you could see it. Do you know this?
Right. Yeah. It's a new product. Yeah. It actually had some like negative reviews. People were kind of not as crazy about it just because it's like a $700 device and it doesn't really. But yeah, I know what you mean. That it projects onto your palm and you can,
something
like,
that the CEO of the company spoke, and it also had
Indian guy, right?
Yeah. It also had a feature where there was like an AI component where he's like, do you ever send a text to a friend or like you get a text from a friend and like, you can't really read the emotion behind it or like really what they're trying to say. Like AI in that device, it collects the data and it'll like kind of translate really based on past, you know, recordings or interactions, like what really that person's trying to say. I was like, whoa, it's very interesting. But, I don't know much about that product. I went to the talk. I was like, okay, this is new information.
So there is some curiosity in you about this whole space. You're just a little bit cautious of like it taking over. You have some like resistance to, participate or use it on like a daily basis.
I definitely have resistance for sure. I'm like, I have people that help me with my Instagram just because I don't want to deal with it. I know it's maybe ignorant, but like when I think of the word technology, you know, we think like robots, AI, but I gravitate more towards like, you know, sound is an ancient technology. It's just, you know, much more simple. But yeah, I think maybe I've seen too many sci-fi movies. I don't know. Right.
And I think that's a common trait. Like people pay attention to only the negative. I mean, all of the movies are done in that way just because they can sell more tickets to movie theaters and things like that.
Of course. To paint it like that. But yeah, I know I definitely have a resistance, but again, something shifted where when I went to this summit, I said, okay, I'm going to learn more about AI. I mean, a lot of it was like, I kind of start to zone out. I'm like, in full transfer, you know, like remember the Charlie Brown teacher that talks, wah, 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 wah. I was like trying to like really pay attention. And because some of these guys, they're like techie science, brilliant geniuses, and they're talking about these things. And I have no idea, like blockchain technology. I'm like, okay, you lost me. Like, so I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I did, you know, it was like a stepping stone for me too.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's actually the job of those communicators to bring it down to the level that people like yourself who know nothing about the deep tech could easily understand, break it down to the simplest concepts.
Yeah.
And I feel like, we're still not fully there yet. That bridge has to be built.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the assumption is that they're speaking to other people in tech. And I have to always remember that when I'm also teaching something like a breathwork technique or like yoga or something, like I won't use a lot of Sanskrit. So I have to think that I'm teaching to like the masses. I think that's why the word breath work has become so popular, but really there's like, hundreds of pranayama techniques. But if you say, okay, we're going to do Anuloma Viloma Pranayama, people are like, what? Like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't want to do that. I don't know what it is. But if you just simplify, and I think the same thing with tech, when they start to use verbiage that's like people will know in the industry, I'm like, I don't know. I can't follow. Yeah.
Is there benefit of using tools like, let's say, psychedelics to speed up the process of personal like evolution? Do you even believe in that? Like,
I love psychedelics, but I love them for for me. I don't know. I think people are getting a little carried away. Is my opinion. I love it. I think I've seen microdosing be beneficial to a lot of people in my circle. I've sat in ceremony, and I do think it's beneficial, but without integration, without like a pause, I don't think we need to be like, how about we just enjoy our natural state? Don't we want to get there? So I think psychedelics can like crack you open and be like, wow, okay, now, and it can be like fast track a lot of things that you need to work through. I mean, for me, I did like a pretty big hero dose with a friend of mine who's a therapist and of psilocybin. And I feel like I got through a year's work of therapy in that session, but it was very important. I didn't need to do it again the following weekend. I mean, I had these like friends in the ayahuasca, they were sitting in ceremony every weekend. I'm like, well, without judgment, but like I guess I was judging. I was like, but what do you, unless you are a shaman and you have to do that every weekend, I just like, I don't understand like how they were integrating it. Like, why do you need it every weekend? Or are you just using it to escape? So I think I'm a fan of psychedelics. I think they're, beautiful. And of course, if, I know there's a lot of contraindications if you suffer from any other mental illnesses or if you're on certain SSRIs there is, but who knows? Like, are they for everybody? I don't know, but I definitely am a fan. I've had amazing experiences with, specifically like with ayahuasca and psilocybin. So,
what would you like to share? Any like profound experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I've done sand ceremony a few times. I mean, you just get these. I mean, first of all, let me backtrack by saying, if I'm going in, I'm going in. Like, I'm not really into the microdosing. Like, if I want to do it, I'm going to go full on. Like, I want to suffer. I want to see what's going on in there. Like, I really, truly will do. I've maybe sat in ceremony like 5 or 6 times in the span of 15 years. So, I want to go into like the darkness. And I've kind of like the whole preparation of like doing this, the ceremony. I know like very popular now is like people are smoking DMT and Bufo. There's so many different, but it's like you go up, you go down. I like ceremonies where you have to actually cleanse and do the work before and like really prepare your vessel to go in. And then you go in and you're like, oof, you get your ass kicked. But I like that. So I think through these ceremonies under the right guidance, you can really uncover like like I said, a pattern, something that's repeating in your life. Like, oh, that's where that's from. And you go deep into, I feel like these plant medicines, you can access memories that you would have never have accessed if even through therapy, traditional therapy, like you can, and then you can try to break that pattern. But then you have this eye-opening experience. I think afterwards, the integration, okay, now you have this information. What are you going to do about it? Like what's the work now after ceremony?
So the most profound experiences were the ones where you shine the light on the darkest side of yourself. Is that what you said?
And like trauma, like past trauma is not like, I mean, I feel like doing these ceremonies, you do go into this like the deepest depths of yourself, like the unconscious. I mean, we all have like our stuff, you know, like I said, we're human. We're not perfect. So to try to discover like why you do the like certain things that might be portrayed from people, from yourself as a negative aspect, like why are you repeating those patterns, that comes out. And, you know, it could be seen as like a darkness, but like through the plant ceremonies, it comes to the surface and you can look at it and be like, okay. And maybe you have compassion for that part of you. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had very profound experiences. And of course, I think the purging aspect, which a lot of people don't like, but I think that's like very important aspect. Like you're purging out like those negative emotions or this trauma that keeps you in a loop of these negative patterns. It really can break it. And that's my experience. I know some people have, there's all sorts of different experiences.
Would you say we are part of our mission here is to work through some of those traumas and evolve, and if you believe in the reincarnation, I'm sure you do. You clearing more and more, you become... I think, for sure. And I think that's why we connect with certain friendships that might be challenging or relationships. It's like you see all your stuff come up and you try to evolve past it. But I think, you know, that is the purpose. I definitely, I believe in reincarnation for sure. And do you think there's value in almost like, I mean, it's a very Western approach, speeding up the process of like evolution, of your personal evolution.
Yeah, and I think psychedelics do that.
Right.
Yeah, I think they do. How much you speed up, I don't know. But, and then you do see like some people, they're just stuck. And it's like they've reached maybe a certain age. You're like, oh, you don't want to think this way, but you're like, they're just like never going to change. They're too ingrained in cemented into their ideas and being like, they're not open enough to explore. And that's fine. Maybe next life.
Right.
But maybe like someone like you and I were in this place at this moment in time and we're like so open to explore these things because maybe a few lifetimes ago we were one of those rigid, cemented people. And now we're like, oh, okay, we're evolving. So I don't think it only takes this lifetime. It might take many. Yeah.
What do you think happens after you work through enough of them or all of them? I don't know. Like what's the door towards which we're working? Like what's behind it? Like is it beyond the physical world? Do you think we do evolve into the world beyond the 3D?
I don't know. I think maybe we only get there once we transition. I don't know. I've been like fascinated listening to a lot of these like near-death experiences, and it just seems like once the soul leaves this physical body, it's like, oh, they're enlightened. Like everybody's enlightened. It's like it's really wild. So I don't know. I don't know if, I mean, I definitely think you unplug like a part of you, like a circuit of energy that's keeping you trapped into maybe an unconscious pattern. And like then when you can unplug enough circuits, it's like you're more expanded and open. What does that mean? Like, I don't know. Like for each person, I think it's different. Are you more, I mean, we're all enlightened in some way, but we just like full of experiences and traumas. And I think when I think about that word enlightened, like what does that mean? I think it's the process of becoming light. Like a lot of these experiences, they feel heavy in the body. And we collect all these traumas and these emotions, and it like, you can physically, like when you go through something hard, it like weighs you down. Even like if you see someone going through something, even their posture changes. It feels heavy. So when you go through these experiences, and I've seen people in yoga classes just doing postures where they're like kind of releasing it in the body, and they like, you could see they became lighter.
Right.
So like enlighten I think that's what is like one meaning of it. I mean, at least for me, the process of becoming light, of liberating, like, that's freedom, of not carrying that resentment or anger or fear.
Yeah.
It feels light. I feel free. Oh, okay. This is what it is.
I don't know if you've heard Terence McKenna. Do you know?
Yeah.
So he has this theory, not really backed up by like science or anything. There's just like an interesting thought. He's saying that evolution is conquest of dimensionality, meaning you're going from one dimension to the next. And he gives an example where the most primitive forms of life were this cell sitting on the rock somewhere in the ocean that doesn't really have any capability of navigating 3D space. Is just like a stationary little thing. And then, and as it evolves, it starts to create a more complex, structures that's starting to have parts of locomotion that's able to like wiggle, move a little bit, and starts to primitively navigate the 3D space, and starts to like wiggle a little bit, and to the point where the most evolved species, let's say humans, now able in the physical dimension, they're able to build cathedrals, they're able to fly to space and things. So we really mastered the 3D space.
Right.
And as we were coexisting and kind of evolving in this 3D, we also started to coexist in another new dimension in which, let's say, language and cultures and ideas, since this idea space that is not a physical space, that it's another dimension, but it is pretty real. Like it's not just some kind of idea. It has real legs and roots to, it's really rooted in the 3D space as well. And he's saying that maybe the evolution is this it's this process of us not necessarily escaping, but that's the process of going into that another dimension that is non-physical.
Yeah, like what does Joe Dispenza call it? The quantum field. People are tapping into that. I mean, it's amazing. I've gotten there through sound. Like when I've received it from my teacher in Nepal, I was like, "Whoa, where, how was I just now?"
Right.
You're like in this sleep-wake state, and it's interesting.
And when you mentioned enlightened, becoming light. So light is that kind of like a borderline of physical. Yes, we can still measure it in the physical dimension. It's like this wave pattern, but it's much more subtle.
Yeah.
And even if you notice the way we've been interacting with technology, we used to have physical buttons pressing, and then now it's just a subtle touch. It's becoming less and less physical.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. And then at some point in the near future, we'll be able to interact with technology without even touch, just by looking at things. In fact, I just this morning I read about the new iPad able to read where you're looking, and it's able to interpret for mainly for people who are like it's like an accessibility feature where
that's so cool.
So you're able to just like look, and it will able to understand you. And I'm sure at some point it will be able to read your mind as well. Like,
yeah, I think they're already reading our minds.
Probably are. Yeah. But they will be reading your mind in a lot more, and hopefully you will be able to read your mind for yourself, not for them to sell you more stuff, but for more insight. Again, this could be a tool for transformation on par with something like psychedelics, ayahuasca, or something like that, where you're looking into the depth of your experience. You can maybe access those parts potentially with technology also, and look at them and understand them more.
Yeah. It's like wild to think we're going in that direction. Like, it's cool though.
I think we are going into that direction if if enough people put intention into it and really manifest it. I think it's still not a for sure thing, I feel like.
Yeah. I will say, like, a lot of the AI talks I went to, it seemed like the CEOs and they did have like good intentions. Like I was like, oh, these are like conscious spiritual people. They're not, so that kind of broke my misconception of like the techie people.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I was like, like they actually do care about the human experience and how this is going to affect, like there is like a whole, from what I learned, like they have a whole team dedicated to that component of like what are going to be how can we combat these quote unquote negative effects? So I was like, okay, this isn't like child's play. They've got it together and they're
totally
considering all of that.
Yeah. And I think all of the negative externalities that we have with technology are just exposing the vulnerabilities of the current vessel that we're in as we're preparing for the next stage of our existence. We're just like mapping out things that we need to address.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah, I'm more open to learning about it, but I'm
all about building the bridge between technology and spirituality. This whole podcast is centered around building the future that is desirable, something that we actually excited about, want to live in, and it's the future that incorporates all of the qualities that we know for sure serve us, the ones that served us for thousands of years. Deep human connection, authentic expression, like presence, all of those qualities. And I think we should really promote those in digital spaces. That's part of the intention of this podcast, is broadcast that message more. It's just my small contribution to like pushing that direction.
Yeah, if we can do these little hacks and have technology be, carrot to bring it into a positive light, then like why not?
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll touch on a little bit on the topic of AI, and I did want to talk about the spiritual fraud topic. I think that's a good important topic. Actually, I did a little research into it, and I think it's worth talking about.
Research about. You just look through.
It's totally worth talking about.
I think it comes down to people that aren't in alignment, like. There's a lot of nonsense. Oh my God. I've been in this community a long time and my bullshit barometer is pretty high. Look, and like I said, no one's perfect. This isn't a judgment like, oh, that person's not spiritual. But again, it's like, what is spirituality and what is consciousness? Like, you don't have to be a perfect human being or do this and fit in this box, but there definitely are people that like, I try my best to be authentic on my Instagram. Like you get what you see. Sometimes if I'm like, something makes me angry, like I share it and I share it in a very blunt way. I'm like, this is not okay. But there are people using the facade of like, okay, what is it to be spiritual? I have to do this and talk this and everything's peace and love. And I'm right. And then you meet them I'm like, oh, like, what happened there? Like, you're not
right.
Like they're using the, like what people think spirituality should be and that whole Western mindset. And I say fraud because I'm like, and then you meet them and their actions and the way they treat people and the way they are. And they're like, are like completely not aligned with like what they're promoting.
And do you think they're doing that intentionally, or maybe they are attempting to show up in a certain way almost for themselves? They're proving themselves that, yes, I could be that way. Maybe I'm not that way just yet, but I'm attempting to do that.
Yeah, I think there's all of it. There's all sorts of different characters, all sorts on different paths. And, but that like, just also like in like, I've done a lot of like events and business with a lot of different people, and just like the integrity sometimes. Like integrity is something very important to me. Like, it's just not there yet, maybe. And they portray themselves as something very different. And, I don't know. I just like really call on people just like to be you, be authentic. Like you don't have to paint yourself as this like airy fairy, with the hat and the cloak and the sparkles on your head. And then like and then the spiritual gaslighting is like, drives me nuts. Like, you know, there you have a lot of this toxic positivity. Be positive, be positive. Yeah, well, sometimes life hands you a shitty situation and it's not always easy to be positive. Or like if a friend comes to you and was like, yeah, I'm feeling really upset today. This happened. Like if I try to never respond by, oh, don't worry, be positive. Like I feel like that's very gaslighting, but we're told that that's the spiritual thing to do, to always see things in a positive light. I don't play that game. I'm very like, yeah, you know what? That sucks. And that person's a jerk. And it's the truth. People are like, oh, that's so not spiritual. It's so not yogi. Well, okay. Now you could think what you want, but so that's what I say, that this spiritual, there's like this facade that people think they have to put on for other people to be accepted, to be liked and seen as this, wow, they're so spiritual.
Right.
But again, we're humans, like just be you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Have you experienced maybe either yourself or saw other people being affected by those kind of like fake gurus of some sort? And what would be the, Yeah.
I mean, you see it on, there's just so many like documentaries on these fakers. I mean, I think that's why I liked Osho, because he wasn't pretending to be normal. Like he was, I mean, what is normal? Then we get into that. But he was like, yep, I like to express sexual freedom. I like my Rolls Royces. I like my watches. And I also like meditation, and great. He was authentically himself and crazy and say what you will. But I mean, we see like a lot of these, I guess, you know, like the Bikram, like using spirituality and this to like take advantage of people. That's what I have a problem with. Like if you're using to exploit people or get more money or, you know, exploit women, exploit men. I mean, it happens from both ends. So yeah, I think on a larger scale, we're seeing a lot of these gurus being exposed. You know, they're not who they say they were. They're using their fame or their practice to act and be a certain way. So, and it happens in the community too, like in little ways, but.
Right. As you've seen kind of a lot of it, what would you say is the red flag for someone who might be somewhat new to that, the whole spirituality space, and they're pretty open, suggestible, like they have a lot of suggestibility towards everyone. So how would you...
So I would say, like, always do your research. So when I say spiritual fraud, like, there's a lot of, when I started teaching and practicing, Instagram wasn't really a thing. So I really, and I know a lot of teachers, like, there's a lot of like OG teachers here I have a lot of respect for. They did their trainings, they did their work, they did tons of hours of studying, training, and certifications, and they really wanted to be educated to help people. But now with Instagram, there is people with no credentials, no trainings. I'm not saying that people don't have natural gifts, but there's a reason, like if you, let's say, for instance, you work in the spa, like you have to have your massage license. You can't just start poking around in someone's body without knowing what you're doing or knowing the anatomy without a license. But now what's happening in the world of Instagram, people are promoting themselves as this teacher, you know, coach, and they really have no credentials. I've even done some research. So I would tell the viewer, like you could, you know, hire a marketing company and you could look beautiful and fit and they could have no background or no training in what they're promoting. And just because their page is nice, people are like, they gravitate towards it, and they're being very vulnerable and open with these people that there's also a lot of self-proclaimed therapists. People are saying they're therapists, and they are not qualified to deal with your stuff. You know what I mean? So I would say always research, ask where you went to school, where you got your certification, who'd you study with, what lineage, what practice, what, I mean, I did a little research in digging into someone that said she was a neuroscientist and claimed she was a therapist. She had it was like a complete fraudulent thing to say. There no neuroscience background, forget background, but just like, you know, like no PhD. And like, think about like people that really go through the work to study.
Right.
And like what that I mean, it's like, I can't say I'm a doctor all of a sudden.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think it is important for people to discern and through all of like the spiritual fluff and like say like, okay, like I'm about to go give this person $5,000 to do a teacher training with them. I'm just saying like in yoga terms, like where did they study? How many hours that? How long have they been teaching? Like it's important to know these things. Or like I'm about to sign up for this person's coaching program that's like $20,000. I saw my friend. Then this person has no background in anything. And again, there are people with just like special gifts. I'm not taking that away. Like I think there are some very gifted and talented humans that are just, but I just think there's a lot of, but people are like, oh, there's this thing I can plug into, like spirituality and consciousness and health and wellness sells. So now you have these Instagram people that really have no education, or they're just like promoting themselves of these.
Right. And do you think that's more harmful than good, what they're doing?
I do. Like the people that are saying, I mean, yeah, like number one, they're lying, some of them. And number two, I don't think that a lot of people are well equipped to handle maybe what someone is going through. Like, you know, sometimes even in like this sound space that I had to have a lot of privates, and people say, well, I'm going through this. I said, you know what? You need to talk to your therapist. You should always like refer out. Like, I'm not a psychologist. I think like there are, and that's how, like also how we build community, like supporting each other. Someone that's like worked hard in their field, like let's like refer out like these people, like if you really want to help. And again, is it harmful? I think it depends on the severity of, like if someone's going through a very dark time or like suicidal and you're like, oh, I can help you, I'm a coach. I think that's way out of integrity and not, but if someone's like, you know what, I have a little bit of low back pain, I want to do yoga, like, okay, you know, but it's a slippery slope. I think it is.
That makes sense. Yeah. Do you think there is maybe also a need for some kind of verification, almost like platform? You put anyone's name and they tell you, here are some of the credentials that they have.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah. I mean, you can, like, as far as like there's Yoga Alliance, which isn't great, but yeah. And I think usually some people do put their credentials like on their site, but then there's some people that put their credentials and they don't have any of those. So yeah, that's a good idea for an app.
Right. So like work with accredited sources that give some kind of accreditation and keep the database of all of the courses of people that they train and to verify that they are actually licensed or whatever. Yeah. Or, took some kind of training. Yeah, because when you research like doctors, like people can't just promote themselves as a doctor. We need to have some kind of accountability in the wellness space. Like there's a ton of people giving out nutrition advice that have no background. And I mean, everybody knows the basics of how to eat clean and how to eat healthy, but it's getting definitely tricky to find, like when I'm researching someone that I want to know that they know what they're doing. They're like, I have like an acupuncture I work with and, massage therapists like that I know, like you're trusting these people with your bodies and your energy. Like, so. Any last notes, thoughts, that you would like to share, something that you think is important for people to hear in this format?
Be playful, keep the balance. The spirituality, and don't let it, it doesn't have to be something that's so serious. I think playfulness is being spiritual. Yeah.
Cool. And then how can people find you and what maybe places they should go to?
I usually post all my events on Instagram. I do a lot of events, pop-up events in town and retreats. So yeah, there's a good place.
Any cool events coming up?
Yeah, I'm doing one next week at Super Blue. It's interactive, very kind of trippy museum with it's actually very techy. Like you can interact with the different rooms and it changes depending on your, like when you walk in. I don't know, have you ever been there?
I think yeah, I think that's where we went, and it was like some room with the foam, some room.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? Yeah,
I do sound breathwork and sound experience there once a month. So it's happening next Thursday.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. I like the interactive spaces. I think future spaces are going to be a lot more aware who is in that space and they will adapt to.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like it too. Yeah, it's something different than just like looking at a painting,
Right,
yeah,
right.
An experience.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
This was great.